Hi everyone, it's Kathy with Sycamore and Cotton, and I'm so glad that you're here. This week's video has got 4 super fast, super easy, and super cute spring projects. So let's get started. There aren't any easier projects than when you just match 2 thrifted pieces together. These 2 pieces came from different shopping hauls, probably different stores. They've been in my stash and I just pulled them out, and luckily the cloche fit on the saucer to make a beautiful cloche display. And it's a JG Meakin saucer, so it's a high quality, beautiful pattern saucer. Let me know what you think about the marriage of these 2. I think it turned out beautiful and is so special for spring. Actually, it's suitable for Christmas or fall or really any time of the year. So let me know if you like it, and let me know if you've ever thrifted and matched items together like this. This next project is this little tiny teapot, and someone had given it to me. A good friend had given it to me actually in a box of other things. It didn't have a lid to it, and it had a few cracks in the blue. As you know, I love anything blue and white, but I didn't know what to do with it since it had those cracks in the blue and there wasn't a lid, and I thought, well, let's turn it into a flower pot, something to hold some artificial or a faux greenery. So since it did have the crack in it, or a couple of chips actually, not cracks, I decided to paint the whole thing white because I do also really like solid white ceramic houses. So I gave it one light coat of paint, in a chalk paint, let that dry. I brushed on 3 coats, and then I stippled on the final 4th coat. It wasn't really needed in terms of coverage, that 4th coat wasn't, but I wanted to cover the brush marks, and so that stippling really did a good job at that. Unfortunately, I did not get the stippling on video, but if you have not done stippling before, it's just taking your brush or a sponge dauber, getting your paint on it, and then just dabbing it on, pouncing it onto whatever you're painting. After it dried, I got out my floral foam. I had just a little scrap piece, but it was still too large. So I'm using a putty knife to cut into that and make it smaller so that it will fit down into this little pitcher. And now I'm ready to add some greenery. It's a bit of a challenge choosing faux greenery that's going to look somewhat natural in this little pot. But I start out with a little bit of Spanish moss. I want to cover the foam with that. And then I start adding the greenery, which I had already taken off the larger stems and cut it down to size so that it would be more of the size that I needed it to be for this small vase. Now I'm using a faux boxwood, and that's the primary greenery that I'm using. What you just saw me do was to poke a hole down into that foam to make it easier for that boxwood to go down in there. Some of the boxwood was just on plastic ends, the softer plastic. Some were on a harder wire end, just depending on where I cut it from the stem. And so some of it went in easier and some of it needed a little help. After I get the boxwood placed, I then start placing some floral that just has little tiny white flowers on the end, kind of like a baby's breath. And then I have another couple of pieces that are just like little buds that I put in there as well. And something that I did to help keep the floral in place was to put some hot glue either around the stem or down in the vase. I do then go around the edges. You'll see me doing here in just a minute, going around some of the edges, just around the greenery with a little bit of green moss, regular green floral moss. And then it's finished. I'll just need to put a protective coat on the painted house, but it'll be finished by then. So this was a really short project and very easy. I had all of the items on hand that I needed. The little vase was something that's been in my stash for over a year, and that's one less item in my stash. And this is going to be so cute on a tiered tray, or on a kitchen windowsill, or on a shelf in your kitchen. Anywhere that you have a vignette, if you've got a tray on your dining table, or anywhere you have a vignette that you can add a little extra to. And here it is. I hope you like it. I had fun doing it, and I think it's so sweet. Let me know what you think, though. Next makeover is changing up this picture frame I've had in my stash for a little while. Not what I typically like in terms of the color and the style, but I knew that it could be enhanced with some air dry clay and some paint and a little imagination. So what I'm doing here is giving it a good clean, and then I used my sanding board to lightly sand over the top. Since it was a shiny surface, I didn't want to risk the paint not sticking, even though what I use is chalk paint and it is supposed to be good at adhering. These are two castings that were left over from some things I did last spring, actually. And I said I was going to use air dry clay, but these are actually resin. And so I'm placing them on the front using my super glue that has the activator that makes it dry instantly. And I really like this. I'm on my first tube. I really need to buy a second because I've been using it on so many things. It's kind of amazing at just how quickly it dries. So I'm also sanding the back of these resin pieces because they weren't very even. And I want to make sure that they lay as flat as they can possibly lay, because I don't want any gaps or spaces between the frame and the castings. So I'm finally getting these put down with the glue. Now you do want your glue to be all over the entire back, so I put it on, and then using the tip I helped spread it out rather than using my fingers like I usually do with my Titebond. And I definitely didn't want to use a brush either, so I just spread it out using the applicator. I'm not putting that much glue on, it's just that it doesn't come out very quickly. And there I am placing it, and then using the activator and then pressing down on it, because you want to make sure that you apply pressure to it for a few minutes. And I'm wiping up any excess glue that seeped out from the edges. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. Both bunnies are placed now, and I'm going to give it a coat, just one coat of black chalk paint. This is Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. I'm giving it all over coverage, including the rabbits. After the black paint had dried, I gave it a clear coat of Rust-Oleum to protect the black, because I'm coming in now with a white chalk paint, and when I get it coated with 2 or 3 coats, I want to then distress back. And sometimes, especially if you're using a wet wipe to distress back to a black, that black will smear. So putting that clear coat will then protect that paint so that it doesn't smear with the white. After 3 good coats and letting it dry overnight, I came back the next day, and sorry that the lighting isn't good here. I forgot to turn my overhead lights on, and I am using a 220 grit sandpaper to remove some of the white paint to reveal the black. So I'm distressing it a little bit. Now I'm using a little sanding block, and the paint had dried pretty hard, so it wasn't coming off easily, and but I just keep working on it until I finally get it to the look that I like with it. Now I decided to dip a shop towel in some water to wet the paint in hopes that it would make it easier to remove some of the white paint. And it did a little bit, but this paint dries really hard. That's okay though, that's a good thing. Now I'm using a shop towel to remove any of the dust that I created by sanding, and using a brush to get that out of the grooves of those bunnies, making sure I got all of it really well. Because next I'm going to come in with a clear wax. The reason why I'm doing that is I want to put on a darker wax, but I only want the dark wax to stay down into the crevices of the rabbits and in the details of the frame. And so by putting on the clear wax first, I'm able to control how much of that wax or how much of the dark wax stays on the frame and on those bunnies. And putting on clear wax before helps you be able to control how much dark wax you leave on your project. Another method for controlling the dark wax is by thinning it down just a little bit with mineral spirits. And I learned this from Rachel at the Eclectic Cottage. And I was so happy to find this works really, really well. And I just dip my brush in the wax and then dip the brush into the mineral spirits, and that thins out the wax and gives you more control for how much you are using on the project. Make sure that I get all of the spaces, all the crevices, and then after everything's covered, then I take my dry shop cloth and start removing that dark wax. It's still a little darker than I want it to be, so I take a brush that I had just used with clear wax, and I am going over it with that, and that helps to remove some of the dark wax. I printed off a few pictures that I wanted to try to see which I would like best for it, and the black and white was definitely out. So I'm using this one with the 4 bunnies. I love the colors in it, and I love the bunnies going in the frame between the 2 bunnies that are on the outside. So what I'm doing now is using the glass to cut out around the picture that I printed, and I'm cutting it with my X-Acto knife because I could not find a pen, or a pencil rather, to draw around the edge of the glass. So I'm just cutting it with my X-Acto, and that's making a score into the paper, and then I will use my scissors to cut around that score. Now I'm cleaning both sides of the glass really well using glass cleaner. And after using it on both sides, I get a clean cloth and clean it again because I want to remove any streaks. It was pretty dirty. I had taped up the back because that's actually a velvet back on it, and I wanted to keep that nice and clean and keep the paint off of it, so I taped that up. I didn't show that at the beginning. But I think this looks super cute in there. What do you think? I love it. Now at the bottom it looks like maybe the print isn't in there well, but at the bottom it actually says Happy Easter. And what I'm doing here is using just a little bit of white paint to dry brush on all across the bunnies and the frame, just to lighten it and brighten it up a little bit, because dark wax tends to make things a little darker than I want sometimes. But here it is. I think it turned out super cute, and removing the tape around the edges is really fun to do. Who else likes doing stuff like that and see that nice edge that you made by having your tape along the edge? I think it turned out really cute. Let me know how you like it. This last project is a finial that's been in my stash for a while. I am working through my stash. If you haven't noticed, I'm trying to work through it, and actually I've promised myself that I won't thrift until I've worked through quite a lot of the stash that I have. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with this finial. That's one reason why it's been in my stash for a little while, but I got my order of Apothecary paint from my friend Emily at J. Bowen and Company, and I just could not wait another second to use it, to try it out. It's my first time using Apothecary. This is one of DIY's really popular paint colors. It's been out there for a while, but I had not used it yet, but I've just admired it on everyone else's projects on videos that I watch. But anyway, I decided to use that, and it turns out beautifully on this finial. I just put on one coat, I think is all it took. It might have taken two, I guess. And I don't do anything else except go back over it and wipe it back. You can wet distress with DIY paint, and that makes it a lot easier than what I went through with that picture frame that I just finished in the previous clip. Next, I used a dampened shop towel to just rub over the edges of the finial, and just to remove some of that paint, give it a little bit of a rustic look, and also doing so shows more of the detail. And other than a top coat that I'm going to spray on after this, and I do that off camera, other than that, it's finished. I debated putting a white wax on, but I really like the simplicity of it. I love this Apothecary paint, and I love being able to wet distress. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with me today. I really do hope that you enjoyed these projects, and I hope that you'll come back to see what my next video will be all about. I appreciate all of you, and if you haven't already, I would really appreciate if you would follow and subscribe to my channel so that you get notifications when I put a new video out. And leave me a comment. I love knowing where you're from. I love interacting with all of you and getting to know you. So until next time,